Watch your backs. Zeke's are inside.
I think I might have been one of the few people that actually enjoyed the film World War Z, but the game seems to have had more of a popular reception over time as it's been improved and developed. But the name Saber Interactive, the developer, have become synonymous with producing Nintendo Switch ports which have absolutely no right running on a small hybrid console, but managed to do just that. Originally released back in 2019 on other systems and seeing its November 2nd release here on the Switch, we'll go over the performance in terms of frame rates, we'll have a look at the image quality, the lighting effects, textures, shadows, and discuss the resolution. We'll examine the connectivity on the Nintendo Switch version as well as any other options that are available and look at the control settings. We've got a copy of this one to give away, so let us know in the comments if you'd like to enter. And at the end of this video I'll give my impressions of the game based primarily on experience on other platforms but also on the Switch version. Is it World War Z performance issues? Well, let's find out. Let's dive in straight at the deep end then and look at the performance. Saber Interactive discussed recently how this was their most challenging port to date. I think that's a combination of things. Firstly, there's netcode requiring 4 of you to be on screen at the same time, but more taxing than that would be the thousands of zombies on screen. Not only can these climb and gather together, they can vault over surfaces, there are several different varieties, and this then has to be tracked and maintained across 4 different consoles. My expectations had this been any other developer would have been remarkably low, but as you can see from the frame rate graphs, they've managed to lock out 30 frames per second. Now, although I didn't manage to capture it, I definitely did see some frame drops, but I'd say that's to be expected. For it to be locked out at 98% of the time at 30 with good frame pacing is more than I could have hoped. They've also targeted the same frame rate for handheld mode, and as far as the Nintendo Switch OLED goes, handheld mode offers a few benefits. Now, next we'll look at the visual quality. This is going to be the area where the Switch really looks different from other platforms. They've really had to claw back performance in any way they can, and this is shown with the visual quality. The Switch version targets 720p, with designer Dmitry Grigorenko commenting that when many zombies are on screen, they use dynamic resolution scaling as well as temporal anti-aliasing to try and maintain that frame rate. But the overall image quality when in motion isn't too bad. Many of the locations are quite dark, which hides some of its biggest flaws, but upon closer inspection, especially slowed down, the textures have clearly seen a very large hit in quality. The models of the zombies have also seen a drop, but even with hundreds fully animated on the screen at any one time, trying to climb walls or rip your throat out, that performance is maintained, which is very impressive. Shadows are one of the first areas that are generally cut to increase performance, and the number of dynamic lights has also been culled. Certain particle effects and lighting effects have also dropped down. Things like the flames here on the floor, as unfortunately some idiot in our team accidentally threw a Molotov cocktail into the doorway. I'm so sorry. They look decidedly last generation. Just by its nature, there isn't much time to stop and smell the roses, and these aren't gameplay affecting changes. If you were after that 4-player co-op experience, then you're going to get that same thing here. There's no real tweakability when it comes to visual quality. It's not a game where you're going to be worrying about text size in handheld, so that's not an issue. Which takes us on to audio. Now, audio quality seems good, and I'm very pleased to say that there is voice chat on the Nintendo Switch console. This enables you to plug in a headset and you can communicate more easily with your team. Due to no one having chat in the online session that I was in though, I can't confirm about its quality, but it is nice to see it in there. While the Nintendo Switch tends to lean towards the non-3D surround sound, I can say that the audio quality, as far as the bitrate, was very good. The hordes of zombies screaming in the distance or your comrade being chomped on sounded suitably high fidelity. Saber clearly have a good grasp of their own proprietary engine, the Swarm engine, and being able to get 1,000 enemies on screen on this console is impressive. One big visual downgrade that I have noticed are that some of the animations don't seem to be played, or there's a slight disconnect. It might be to do with the online nature, but you might even be able to see it from some of the footage. I can't remember if this was something that affected the PC version, but I certainly don't recall it, and maybe they had to simplify some of the reactive animations. I'm not sure. You have to let me know down in the comments. Load times are quite long. You're looking at a minute, maybe even longer when you're initially loading into a stage. Thankfully, it's just that initial load time that's a problem, and the matchmaking itself on the Switch has been very solid. Finding a game using the quick option or just matching up with some friends hasn't been plagued with the issues we saw over on Dying Light, but there's the potential this changes as more and more people pick up the game. Next up then are the controls, and this is one area that I go to straight away whenever I play anything that involves holding a gun in a game. I'm looking for those gyroscopic controls, and unfortunately they've just not been able to implement that. There are no gyro controls in the Switch version, and I sincerely hope that's something that they consider adding in. The responsiveness is there for it to work, and the frame rate was also fine for gyro controls as we've seen in other shooters. I know they're not everyone's cup of tea, and many of you won't care in the slightest, but I find that granular level of aiming for headshots and things like that is a bit of a game changer. Other controls that are available are things like changing the XY axis, sensitivities, as well as the auto aiming. I found with a Pro controller it was very easy to aim, and you can customize your actions to whether you want them toggled or hold down, things like aiming down the sights, as well as crouching and running. One slightly unusual element is that when you go to the multiplayer section of the main menu, it takes you to the eShop, where you can then buy skins or the deluxe DLC pack. I didn't know if that was locking out another multiplayer mode or what. It seems more likely that it's just a multiplayer store where you just go and buy your stuff. Final thoughts then on visuals and performance and controls. It works on the Nintendo Switch. I prefer playing it in handheld on the Switch OLED. Just by the nature of that small screen, everything looks crisper. And when you consider that there aren't gyro controls, there's no real reason for me to have it on the big screen. 30 frames per second is good enough, but when spread over a 4K screen, expect your eyes to be filled with Vaseline. And it is a shame, honestly, that there aren't gyroscopic controls. As far as the game itself, you've essentially got something akin to Left 4 Dead. You'll have a 4-man team made up of one of the 16 characters, and there are several different classes to choose from and improve. Stages play out almost like a series of interconnected arenas, with zombies flooding in to end your lives, and perhaps some switches or other collectible items to be gathered. What it amounts to is incredibly tense, fast-paced action that requires all of you to work together to try and keep the hordes at bay. Scattered about each area, you'll find different pickups. These range from primary or secondary weapons to heavy weapons which have a limited use, as well as medkits, molotovs and grenades. Later in the game, you'll unlock breaching charges which allow you to access different areas, but from a gameplay standpoint, it's quite a linear experience, and some may find it a tad formulaic. Now, forget all that noise. It's incredibly fun. If one of you goes down, the other can res them, or a tank takes one of your team down, then heroically charging in and pumping shotgun blasts into its spine or swinging your chainsaw at it are exactly what gaming's all about. It's formulaic, it's repetitive, but it is very fun. There's a lot of content to work your way through, and it is nice to have another of this style of games on the Switch. It's going to take up around about 9.7 gigabytes on your console, and that price of £34.99 does seem a little bit steep. As it's a game we've played previously on other platforms, we can give you a score. Let me know if it's one you'll be picking up, and as always, a big thanks to all of you who enjoy the content and the channel. If there's anything that I've missed out or anything you'd like to know, please do leave a comment down below, and remember, we'll be giving away a copy of this game. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!